Crude Audacity podcast.
You are listening to the Crude Audacity podcast, the podcast that talks shop shit and all things strategy with Oilpatch influencers. I am Catherine Mills, and before we begin today, wherever you are listening from, go ahead and leave us a rate and review. And of course, if you are on YouTube, click that little button right down there and hit subscribe. That way you can stay up to date on all things oil, energy, and of course, the Crude Audacity. And a huge shout out to all of you listeners. I love seeing your engagement, your comments, your shares. Thank you so much for taking the time. I love hearing from you. And I know that our influencers do too. Today, y'all, I have been waiting for this topic. I have been geeking out on this topic because today we address digital disruption in the oil field. Let me paint a picture for you, shall I? The air is crisp and cool. The light is coming over the mountainside, and you can hear a rumble in the background because the faces of oil and gas are rising up, and it is time to tell our stories and show the world what we can do. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today by a woman who is not afraid to break the rules, who is paving her own path, and who is unapologetically standing up for oil and energy, the brains behind Oil Country Media, and a pioneer in digital strategy, KRISTEN Underwood. Welcome to the Crude Audacity.
That was absolutely the most wonderful introduction I've ever received. Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I definitely feel very similar feelings towards you and what you're doing right now in the industry. And I'm proud to be here. So
I am so excited to have you. This is one of my favorite topics. It's such a game changer for our industry. And since we are in a crew change, I mean, it's anyone's game. What I love so much about what you're doing, though, is we have a lot of people playing in this space right now, but not many of them are actually deep in the weeds of oil and gas. Not many are engineers. Not many have family roots in it. They're kind of peripheral. So you bring a really unique flavor to this digital disruption that is oil and energy. And before we jump into all of my questions, because you know I have quite a few, how did you get started? What is the history and how did you evolve to digital strategy?
It's so funny because everyone was on Instagram, Facebook, and I just it didn't appeal to me in the way it did to everyone else. And so when I discovered that I could promote oil and gas on Instagram when there was no oil and gas at all at the time, I mean, very few and zero women, I realized that there was an area there that I could play with. And I actually, when I got on the channel to promote a family business, I didn't tell anyone I was a female. So I kind of I just posted, images of pipe yards and our inventory and, drilling rigs. And I started to grow my page and I just never threw it out there. I mean, I didn't change like my tone of comments or anything, but at one point somebody said something about women and I finally said, I'm a woman, hear me roar. Oh my gosh. So that was kind of the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to, come out and, because it was pretty brutal on there when you're dealing with guys out in the field and trying to post your pictures and, then finding out I was a female. Didn't give me much credit. They're like, oh, you're sitting in an office. You're not out in the field. But
there is a lot of judgment from the field if you are remotely in the office.
I had to kind of straighten a little bit of that out as far as, where I come from and what I've experienced in my lifetime and what makes me want to pick up my phone and take a picture and share a picture of a drilling rig more so than anything else in my life. It's sad. I'm like scrolling through my phone. I'm like, drilling rig, child, drilling rig, child, you know? So people don't understand the passion of it, but it was really kicked off during the downturn.
Which one?
The last one. And when they were letting go a lot of people, the Obama years, and we had a lot of, pages like Oil Pro that were just abandoned.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they had writers that were signed on to run their communications and their social media. And the approach was a little different. So, I don't know how quickly people clung to the same kind of medium as far as them telling a story versus, you know, giving shout outs and saying, hey, I'm really proud of your work and what you're doing out there, and show me your passion. But you don't have to tell me the whole day story. We can tell real simple, and the look on your face, you're covered in oil and mud, you know, and it's a night shift. Like, we know what you're going through. And it was interesting because when I would find a picture like that, or someone would send me a picture like that, when I would share it, I realized that immediately lifted them up, because they're out there on a rig alone, God knows where, you know.
Yeah, middle of nowhere.
And the hitch is a hard cycle for these people. So for someone to be appreciating what they're doing and to celebrate it and to promote them and highlight them and, you know, give them a, thumbs up, be safe out there, it kind of just took a momentum. And there were some other oil and gas pages that helped me out at the time, but it was really to kind of push oil forward, be pro energy. I watched a bunch of pages go dead, and I felt bad for those companies because they couldn't get back into those accounts. You know, they lost the passwords. So they're just like these stale pages with no growth. Mm-hmm. And so once things started kind of picking back up, people started reaching out to me on how to like grow their pages and run their media and what tips I had. And, you know, I hooked up with some podcasts, and I started attending events as press, and it all was centered around promoting people in the field, you know, in the industry, and tying that into my company that I work for as well, which is a family company. So I understand the term, you know, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And, you know, so, and I've seen both sides of it. And I'm not sure that most people have seen both sides of the corporate world, or at least not grown up in it, where you go from someone in your family working in oil and gas and rising up the corporate ladder, and then everything falling apart. Yeah. You know, companies merging, and high salaries are the first to go. And, you know, so there was a lot of ups and downs. And then I saw, my family regroup and build back up and completely change their game plan. And it was something that, you know, was obviously destined to be, but you realize that the big corporations are not exactly all that oil and gas is in the United States.
Well, it also doesn't represent they tend not to represent the voice of oil and gas and all that we accomplish. If anything, they try to make it a politically correct environment that makes everything so neutral that you never get a story. You never actually get to see what's happening or hear the, you know, the rise and the fall and everything that we actually provide because of the corporate narrative.
Right. That's exactly so. And then there's a disconnect between the corporate world, the service world, the field. And then, I mean, definitely on the independent side, a lot of the companies that we work with, service companies, threading companies, inspection companies, IPC companies, internal plastic coating, IPC, they're all independently owned. You know, they're independently owned. They've been in it for 20, 30 plus years. There's, a legacy that moves down through it, and they're strong, and they're a huge part of Texas Energy. And
Absolutely.
people dismiss that. I know that they know it's out there, and I know that those companies have accounts with these smaller companies. The larger companies do have accounts with the smaller companies, but it's kind of dismissed by the corporate world and the corporate narrative, and so there's a disconnect on how people network and communicate, and even just like events and conferences and stuff. And so I found a way to kind of try to fill that gap, and approach people that are working on frac pumps at a conference and interview them and have them show me what's going on and broadcast it live and connect it to, an audience and those things. It's so interesting because people do want to see that stuff. They might not always be able to go to those events, but the fact that they see that they're out there in the field working on that exact same machine, and it's being highlighted at a conference and, being talked about and I guess exploited, but in a good way versus in a negative way, it kind of, inspires people to keep on, pushing forward. And also it reminds them that they too can do this on an independent level.
Absolutely. It galvanizes them and excites individuals in industry. And more than anything, showing the back end of our industry humanizes us to the rest of the world. Because remember, it was always the big corporate scary narrative of big bad oil. And now you actually get to see inside and see everything that everyone is doing to improve the environment, not just protect it or, make places safer, sites safer, fields safer, and elevate and educate their team regardless of their status across the field. These are things you don't learn because they're not talked about. It's always what looks good in the press. And you know what actually looks good in the press? Authentic, honest communication. And that's what you brought to our industry.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm not sure it was necessarily me. I think there's a movement for sure. But back to what you were saying with how we are green energy. Texas is also the leader of wind energy, and they don't talk about us being the greenest state. They hate us because we're the state with the biggest shale formations. Yeah. So, but in fact, we are number one in wind energy as well. So,
and what's so great about wind energy?
Huh?
What's so great about wind energy?
What?
It's backed by oil and gas.
It is.
It would not happen without us on the back end. And that's the thing. It's not an alternative energy.
Right.
It's energy and all the parts fit together.
Right. It's a supplement, maybe an addition.
It's a piece of the pie.
That'll work. But, and they do, and there are instances where they leak oil, especially out in the Gulf, but green energy people won't maybe ever hear that or don't know that, but that is something that happens. They do leak oil, and they endanger wildlife, so those are two cons against wind energy, but we are number one in the state. And I don't think most people know that.
No, I don't think so.
Or in the United States, sorry.
So let's go back, right? Let's talk about the birth of the corporate narrative. I really think it spun mostly out of the transitions that were happening in the 80s, because we don't have a perfect history in this industry. No industry does. But it is ours. We embrace it and we have evolved from it. We've learned from it. And if anything, we have paid it forward to other industries because of our ingenuity. So can you sort of talk to us about what you've seen in terms of the adoption of digital and the reluctance of adopting digital across the patch, from the super majors down to, the small mom and pop, be it service side or operator side?
I think that we're very close to people realizing that, I hear the term a lot and I don't like it, but I like it because it's dinosaurs, and fossil fuels. But, they always say the old dinosaurs of the industry. Well, if it wasn't for the older, brilliant minds, that are mentoring us, now we might be coming in with some different techniques and showing them our mobile phones, and they're adapting. But I remember there was a conference I was at, and it was coming back from a downturn, and we were doing a networking event, and there was this older gentleman outside, and he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. He's like, I got my job back, but it's all millennials, and I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be okay. But from that time to now, it's amazing. And I was just at a virtual conference for the National Association of Steel Pipe Distributors. And one of the questions I asked them was, do you think that COVID has changed the culture of our industry as far as the whining and dining and the traveling and the networking and the expense accounts?
Yeah.
Do you think that this has opened our eyes to the fact that, you can do things and connect with people and network kind of on a different level? And do you think that somebody who, might be a CEO of a company who's never done a FaceTime is now Zooming all the time? And they're like, oh yeah, no, this is no big deal. I'll Zoom all day long. And so I think that this kind of forced the companies to adapt and connect to some of the technology that wasn't there. Now, going beyond that, there's a lot of things that need to be implemented. You work on a lot of data and, software programs and coding and things like that, AI, you discuss a lot. Obviously, all of those things need to be implemented into the industry, and it's time for that change. And that's one thing that I think a majority of the conferences and the press that I have covered has been the main topic, that, it is time to take that leap. And I don't know about the smaller companies needing to do it right away, but I definitely think they need to have some kind of digital strategy to put their name out there.
Yes.
At least have a, Google My Business, start there. But, so it's just interesting because there are some companies that don't really even have websites. They might have like a cookie cutter site from years and years ago. I created the website for the company I work for, but it is by means, nothing spectacular. But, there's really not as much of a need. There wasn't as much of a need for it as there is now, especially with, everything having to go virtual. Everything kind of was old school oil and gas and old school networking and going back to the Rolodex. And it's funny because like you and I have realized, it is such a small world.
Oh yeah.
There are so many different, specialties and expertise and, no matter what sector you're in, but there's just, it never fails that it comes full circle.
Absolutely.
And that is the most interesting part about oil and gas. And I guess that is a scary part about it too, because your reputation absolutely sticks with you, and your drive and your passion and what your agenda is always goes along. It's like your carbon footprint, so to speak.
It's your personal brand.
It is your personal brand. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I started promoting in the field. I started promoting the things that we did. Anytime we were in a pipe yard, or we were at a coating facility, or we were just checking up on inventory, at the mills, or I wanted to see how pipe was actually created, not just
which is really cool.
Yeah, it is so cool. And every time it's just as cool as the last time, because everyone has their own techniques and their own way that they do heat treatment and their own, theories on the way to meet, the standards and the hardness tests and things like that. So you learn a lot, and a lot of things came to Houston at the same time. So I was like literally like in the middle of all of this stuff, and I can't put my camera down, and I can't quit posting. So it turned into this.
I love it though, because I mean, you have a huge following, and I know it's not about you. It's about spreading the word of the oil field and the stories behind it, which is also huge in and of itself. But what you're really doing is you're connecting different parts of the oil patch that otherwise wouldn't have gotten to see each other, from country to country, team to team, and really just kind of showing behind the scenes and what it's like on a hard hitch, as you said, or on a day off, or, here is something like a drill rig, and it's not scary and, this terrible thing that everyone thinks is going to give them nosebleeds. It's actually a really cool piece of equipment doing extraordinary things. And I think that that is the power of social media, because at first, you were limited to just your word of mouth, and now word of mouth is global.
Right. It's the fact that you can honestly reach out to anyone at any time is an amazing tool that, needs to be used. A lot of people are scared of it, and they might not know how to approach it, but that's also the same problem. Is there's so many really big companies and so many powerful networks that don't have a following, that don't have engagement, and they're huge companies. You would think that they would have that figured out, and I'm not saying I could figure it out for that specific company, but it really is something you've got to tailor to yourself. And it's a risk all the time. You have to put something out there and see how it's going to be received.
Well, to that point, I wanted to ask you, when someone sits down with you, one of your clients, I know I've been in this position a few times where, help me build a digital strategy. What am I going to get out of it? What is an actual digital strategy? I'm not selling anything. I'm an operator. And what I tell them is, one, you need to build your own data bank. Everything is oversaturated, and that can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So stay in your lane and build your own data set so that you can understand what your ROI is, and then also have some defined goals. Because even for a small company, you need to be willing to have some sort of transparency for, say, an ESG measurement. You need to be able to show that communication, that willingness to be a good steward, a good neighbor. And then for the big guys who, they center everything around marketing teams, and we'll get into that a little bit, but it doesn't pay to be silent. You can't hide anymore. So you need to have a voice, and that could be a limited voice, or it could be one that's constant, but you need to come up with your plan. So I'm curious how you kind of define digital strategy for your teams and what that has evolved over the time for you.
Well, it's hard to actually get a team that is all on the same page or has the same passion about it. Number one. So it really, I think it comes down from like getting the leader of the company or the leader of the team, or, to back you up on that strategy. But the most important thing is to tell your brand, to show how you're connecting to the community. Like you mentioned, an operator, they might not feel, and some things need to kind of be protected, especially in oil and gas. You don't really want everyone to know exactly where you are. And that's why they kind of keep, or try to keep track on what their employees are posting. There's all kinds of social media rules and things of that nature. I think it's kind of chilled out a little bit when they're realizing that it's user-generated content that's promoting their company, as long as it's not in a negative, tone. And for some companies that I've represented and ran their media, I've definitely had to go back and, remove some things from people coming in and making comments, or ex-employees, so things like that happen. But that's exactly why you want social media management, because, you need to make sure that someone's looking out for your brand that is on social media. But you want to make sure that you're sending a message out about who you are and how you're actually benefiting the community being an oil and gas company, because people have no idea what oil actually does for their community, their schools, their medical, equipment. I mean, they don't even realize how much of our stuff could not exist, including batteries to solar panels, without oil.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things where you want to support the green efforts. I always celebrate Earth Day with a big oil rig anyway, because it comes from the earth. I don't get why people don't get that. Earth Day. Okay. But, I do want to support, the best technologies and stuff. And that, I think that's more along your line on, being an engineer, of knowing where it's evolved and, what things have been introduced into the industry that are changing how we do everything versus, just with, fracking and oil sands and, things like that. So they used to think that all of the oil at the Permian was gone, and they just found out that like a independent family owned company just found like the biggest play out in the Permian Basin here recently that's been discovered, and people were saying it was over, so I don't buy into it's going to be gone in this amount of time. I think that we're going to have a little bit of time for all of the geniuses out there to recreate ways to pull it from the earth. And I honestly don't believe that there's anything that's going to compare to oil and gas as far as energy and a quality of life. Maybe one day, I'm not going to say never, but I don't understand what it could possibly be.
To your point, you have to understand that better. You have to understand where that line of questioning and I guess marketing and rhetoric and gaslighting actually came from.
Right.
But that's just it. To your point, those that oppose industry are using these digital methods. And before it was digital, they were using these grassroots methods to communicate gaslighting headlines, and they stuck. And why we never adopted that, there's a push across the industry for more transparency, and that's the beauty of telling the stories, because that is one of the lines into transparency. But why we didn't push back and say, hold the phone, let me make it clear, it's beyond me. And what I'm noticing with the corporate narrative is that it has, instead of pushing your company's message, the company is adopting the message of the employees. This is why I'm proud to be here. This is why I wake up. This is why I think this is cool and like the data and want to go get my hands dirty and, earn that next color hat from the green on up. You know what I mean? Like, people are proud of their 14, 16-hour work days. And instead of pushing someone else's incredibly polished message, tell it like it is and make sure you're not setting yourself up to be sued.
Well, yeah, of course.
So I am curious, your primary platform seems to be Instagram. Why Instagram? They're not oil friendly.
None of it is. Twitter, LinkedIn is, I think it's just because we're in that network. But no one's oil friendly. And you're completely right. They were one up on us the whole time on trashing the industry. And finally, I thought it was the coolest thing. I don't know if you're, if you're familiar with frac feed. The first time I saw frac feed, I was like so ecstatic. I literally I was like, yes, someone finally gets it. And I apologize for this, but it was a picture of Miley Cyrus. And it was around the time that she, had done her MTV crazy stuff. And she had, real short hair and a tank top, maybe wrecking ball time. And they're like, oil and gas has done this for, America. And it was like, what exactly has Miley Cyrus done? And I just thought, that is so amazing that they're using like pop culture and connecting it to oil and gas and making a point. You realize how ridiculous it is that people are obsessed with Hollywood and anti-fracking and anti-energy, but they're flying around in private jets and, and they're doing running energy on all 3 of their homes. And I guarantee you they're not taking cold baths,
No.
So,
No.
yeah. And so when I saw that some of these organizations were coming in with, this new way to approach the fractivists and things like that, I realized that we were in the right, we were moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But those are all organizations that are tied to, government regulations and the Texas Railroad Commission and stuff like that. So they're also kind of putting their message out there, but they're not necessarily companies that are promoting themselves, and getting business in that respect of being, like a pipe company or a surveying company or a pipeline business. And so I eventually just started reaching out to other people, landmen, like Gateway Pipeline out of Edmond, Oklahoma, anyone that was on social media and just putting their information out. And they may have not had like a following, or they may not have had any idea of what they were going towards.
Yeah.
We kind of pulled together and started retweeting each other and helping each other out. But I migrated to Instagram because I found a way to funnel all my stuff to an organic page. So I bought into, the whole motivation Instagram quote thing that's, blown up. You even see them on LinkedIn now from Instagram. But I fell into that network. And I played around a little bit with some of the memberships and some of the underground marketing and engagement groups and things like that I thought were selling ebooks to help people out and move forward in life. And
I was about to say, what do you think of engagement groups and those underground networks on Instagram?
I mean, it is like I can't even explain it unless I showed you, but the people that I have showed, they're like, what? But they pull, and it's a smart idea. It just went in the wrong direction as far as I was concerned. So, but they literally are motivational groups that bring you out of the Instagram platform, put you on some kind of, messaging group system. And you start chatting with these people and you start sharing posts and motivational posts, and you edit, and people give you like free logos and like, anything that these kids that are very eager to like grab onto something in life to learn to do. And they're creative and talented. They somehow funneled all these people in to where, I mean, I'm not kidding you, hundreds of people were on these chats all day long, and you would create these spreadsheets of shout outs, and they're like, at this time you shout this page out, and then this page will shout you out. And
that sounds exhausting.
Yes, it was, but I did it to feel it out.
Yeah.
I knew that I needed to grow my page. So, but they were all anti-oil and gas, and they kind of discouraged me in that method. But what I found out was a majority of it wasn't real. They were
like fake accounts.
Well, they had they had 35, 36 accounts on a server that, that maybe had like 3 posts on it that they would roll out and follow you. And then if you, and there's programs out there too, where you can they're not necessarily like, it's not an app where you get on your phone and buy followers, but you have a program that you log all your stuff into and you put down, who you think your competitors are, and you have an auto response on your messages. They send out anything that you want at any time as far as what you're selling, what, if you're going live, all these things that seem to be okay. But you're actually setting them up to follow and unfollow accounts. So you'll set like a rule. If this account doesn't follow me back, I will unfollow them. So you have like a certain amount that you can do in an hour, right? Okay. And it just goes on a full cycle. So when I realized that all of these accounts were doing this and back and forth, and then I started realizing where some of these accounts were leading. I didn't want kids sending me money anymore for me to post their content so they could grow their pages. I wanted to take all of my pages. Some of them I've purchased, but I wanted to take all of them and funnel them to oil and gas. And I was going to do what they told me I couldn't do. And I didn't give, I just didn't care if they didn't see that it was all going to be oil and gas eventually. Yeah. And so instead of having these rules of what you could post and how many hours you could post apart and, all this stuff. And I mean, there's some legit magazines and pages that are all validated on Instagram that run these kind of, promotions where you pay like maybe $80 for 3 posts or something. And you might make the post and it's just a quote on a picture and you post it and you get paid, so I'm like, okay, I'll do that on the side. Yeah. And then I realized that, these kids were being taught through these ebooks to create websites and to do things, but they weren't something that I felt was worthy of my time. And they weren't oil related, that's for sure. But so I realized that I wasn't even going to play in that space. And I just changed everything to oil and gas, and I completely left. And they noticed, they're not happy about it, but I just constantly post rigs and I don't care if it messes up their hashtags. Like, so, I don't care. I love it.
So you've played in podcasts, you've been on all the social channels, you understand the stats and the strategy behind most. And if one thing I can tell people is that you're never going to figure out the algorithm. You're never going to beat it. It changes weekly. So stop trying. But what is something when you're looking at these media groups, when you're looking at these companies who are wishing to engage with energy influencers, let's call them, okay, what questions are not being asked? They look at follower count, but no one ever seems to question engagement.
Well, engagement's interesting because if you really look at genuine engagement, it's never very high. I mean, I think it falls between honestly, 2 to 5% is what you can expect of real engagement on a post. Over time, that increases. But for an immediate post within a certain amount, maybe an hour, you're not going to get, if you post and you've got 1,000 likes within, 6 minutes, it's not real. It's code.
No, it's not. And you pick up over 40,000, 50,000 followers in less than.
I've been a part of all that. I mean, I had a oil and gas page that I was convinced to change to a motivational page, and I was getting legitimate likes, doing really well on engagement. I tried to see what this group was doing. I always take the risk, wanted to see what it was like. And people don't like that. Like they see right through it, at least genuine people. They don't want to like a post that all of a sudden got 1,000 likes in 3 seconds, or they'll just pass you by, So I realized once those likes, and I got all this for free. I don't even know how I maneuvered my way into this, but I got them to show me how it all worked for free. And then I was like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm gonna go this way with oil and gas. And I completely started Oil Country Media organic. I still have other pages that have legitimate followers that I use as a funnel, and then I have one for our family company that one I like babysit, and I'm like, I'm not going to hurt you, it's so important to me. So I definitely try to keep that one very clean, just because of the fact that, you don't really own these pages.
No, that's just it.
And
people don't realize you don't own your following. If the site wants to remove your following, if they want to clean up, if they want to push the algorithm, you don't own that. So I actually encourage my groups that I am working with to build email lists and really engage in email content, not to the point of oversaturation, but a constant communication stream. Because if everything went dark tomorrow, you still own that Excel where you house all those emails one way or the other. Right. And that's really the only true ownership you have in social media. Hell, YouTube can delete any page at once at any given time.
Right. Well, they all do, I think. But yeah, and that's exactly right. As long as you can find a way. But for me, I didn't want to take the data that I got and use it to sell it or exploit it.
Yeah.
And people do that. People sell data. And I know that because one of the pages on Instagram that, they're created in other countries and then they're pushed out and they're sold. And these pages, you'll see like my account was hacked, on the profile, and right then that that's a bot. That is an account that was created somewhere else and is just a dead account that will be active for, maybe about a week, and then it just drops or eventually falls off. But these accounts, I saw where these big networks, and they were making money from these poor little kids. They're charging a membership fee, and every month with this membership fee, you get like 2,000 followers. And it was, I don't want to call anyone out, but it's the whole,
quantity over quality.
Well, it's just like the men's quotes and the gentlemen's quotes, and all the ones where you see, the
shock ones. You said it. You put it out there for shock value, but really, what happened was you're an ass.
Exactly. So I took it. I took all the tools, and I was like, writing them down on a list, and I was like, I'm gonna use all of this, but in a completely different way. And then that was kind of where my design came in, and to connect with people that have podcasts, that are publications that, might be one of the biggest publications in oil and gas, but have like 200 followers on Instagram, which doesn't line up. So, and I think now a lot of companies are starting to use Instagram, but Instagram is so powerful with Google. And it is the way to put your company out there for free and not pay for Google ads.
Exactly.
And that's where I just kind of just saturated, Instagram. Now it's caught up. Oil and gas is there. Thank goodness.
I know, right?
It's out there. I don't know if all the pages are real.
They're not.
I've blocked a million of them because they're trying to sell me t-shirts and this and that. And I'm like, that's not why I'm here.
Swag.
Now, of course, I do have t-shirts for sale too, but I'm not emailing you every day about them. So, there's different routes that people take, but there's also a lot of oil and gas professionals that have like these side skills that are promoting, their side business on Instagram as well. And so that inspired me too, because it is very honestly like a genuine group of people. Every industry has good and bad, but overall oil people love their jobs.
Yeah.
And they
Super passionate.
Yeah, they love promoting what they do. And once they get to a point where they, you can always go more, but once they get to a point where they're, happy with their knowledge, their expertise, and the respect that they're given, they're your best ambassador. They're your best, promoter. And if they're sharing good things on, your company, it's about time to allow them to do so under certain guidelines. But there definitely has to be some rules. Smaller companies can kind of get away with it a little bit more. But if you're going to an event, if you're sponsoring an event, you're going to an event, you need to post that you're there.
Absolutely.
You need to show
that what you're providing, what you're doing, how you're connecting. But to that point, we see some of these bigger companies with marketing teams, and they put out all of this information, all these flyers. This is how much money we've raised for the community. And one thing that people don't give a shit about are statistics and numbers. So, I'm of the opinion you cannot properly promote the oil field unless you are really in the mix of it. I actually believe that because we have such an intricate industry. So where do you think marketing teams need help, and how can digital do that?
I haven't found a marketing team that connects to social media. I honestly
explain that.
Well, they might have an amazing video highlighting like a boating trip, a fundraiser, but that video, once it's posted on their Facebook page, doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because they're not making their company share it. People, and that's the weirdest thing about it, is you have to, I heard this quote yesterday, and it was like, it just a light went off, because this is exactly what is wrong. If you're going to brand yourself or you're going to promote a brand, you have to constantly
promote it.
Toot your own horn.
Yeah.
Because if you don't toot your own horn, the band's not going to show up to play with you. Mm-hmm. So you really have to put your energy out there and promote what you love and be supportive, and not care about the people that are going to come and all the trolls that are going to comment and trash you, because they're going to. They love it.
Yeah. I've done this for a year, and trust me, they will find you.
You need to realize that it's not emotional. It is business. Mm-hmm. People respond to it. And that's why social media is so powerful, is because the first 20 seconds that you see an image, you have an emotional response to it immediately. Before your brain can even catch up to the words that's being presented, you have an emotional trigger. So when you see something that catches your interest or your desires or your needs or is inspiring to you, there's an emotional pull from it. But if you're running social media and you're the emotional one, you're going to lose on it, because people are there to, there's trolling groups.
There's actually groups that are paid to harass you. Yeah,
they're paid to harass you, and they do it, and they do it very well. So, you just have to not care anymore, but that also disconnects you with all your friends and family and people you love, because they're I'm like, no, I didn't see your feed because I was too busy, on mine.
Yeah,
exactly. But, I love y'all. But, and so you have to explain that it's designed for one thing, and that's to promote your company and to promote the industry. And your friends from third grade don't care about your oil and gas posts.
No, they don't give a shit.
They're like, snooze.
So one of my wrap-up questions, just understanding the stats, the engagement versus followers, what to look for, and how management teams, decision makers, when they're kind of tossing that around, yeah, we want to make this leap to digital. We want our company to have a voice or to have its voice better positioned. What sort of ROIs can be expected from social media, from podcasting? I mean, again, you have to build your own data bank, but some people think that they're going to jump on YouTube and become YouTube stars just because it's a $58 billion a day business. And I'm sorry, but not all of us are that interesting. That's just the long and short of it. So what can be expected when a company decides to engage with a digital strategist?
It depends on the digital strategist, you know.
One in industry.
Yeah, and it depends on it depends on how far they're willing to go and how scared they are of putting themselves out there. But I really think it's tailored to each company. You know, I don't think that you could. You really have to find where a company's pain points are, and then you have to find where, you know, what they do is inspiring, sets them apart, and you have to highlight that. You have, you know, and you have to make, for example, a video of threading, you know, on a casing joint, interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I think it's interesting, but
I love it, but you have to find a way to make it interesting, and it's got to be raw. You know, it can't be something that's like a PowerPoint lesson to where you're, you know, it has to be like in the moment and raw. And you know, and I did have this conversation at the NSAPT conference as well. I've actually mentioned them twice now, so I hope they
you deserve a raise.
But that was one of the things that we were talking about too, because it doesn't have to always be this huge, perfect picture, you know, that took 3 months to approve and
exactly,
you know, and all this. It could just be walking out to your yard. It could, you know, it could be showing just your team sitting down at a luncheon, you know,
a day in the life, man.
Yeah. I mean, literally it's just getting coffee in the morning and one of your customers dropping off breakfast and giving them a shout out and a thank you. I mean, it's little things like that that kind of humanize it and make you interesting and human and kind and you know, a page that they maybe like want to come back to and check out. But you also have to not be all about yourself. You have to realize that it is about you know, connecting people and highlighting what people do, because they don't get a lot of that, you know, and there's a lot of people that are experts at what they do and they work day in and day out, but they don't get admired for their work from the outside as much as they probably should. And that really keeps people inspired. And I found that it is not a hard thing to do to get someone to tell you about their equipment, tell you how they run it, tell you what it does. You know, they're very proud of that. So,
well, yeah, I mean, pride is real. Again, when you're spending 14 to 16 hours a day working, I don't care if it's behind a desk or in a field or on a rig, you are doing that, and you're not doing that without passion. There's something that, I mean, yes, your family is probably your primary motivator, but there is something more there. There's something that excites you about that role and responsibility. And that is the new corporate narrative, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. And I hope that stays that way, because there's a lot of 9-to-5 workers too, you know, that they're like, I'm in and I'm out and I'm off work. But that kind of comes back to the point where I connect with your story a little bit more, because, you know, growing up in an oil and gas family, you realize that there's no 9 to 5. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, what?
Dad's not
that's
gonna
like,
be home every night, you know?
yeah. And it's something that, you lose sleep over, you wake up in the middle of the night over, you fix whatever you have to fix to get it right to make your customers happy.
Yeah.
And it's on you. And if you have that in you, you know, it needs to be celebrated, and you can learn from every single person in this industry because they've all been through something that, you know, will give you insight on how you can handle something down the road. And that's, I just like to pick people's brains, and find out how they went through it. But, and their stories are long. They're never like, I started here and I ended up here, the same place. It is like this, you know, story of like ups and downs and, you know, mountains and valleys and, you know, and it's
passion.
It's passion.
That's passion.
It's passion.
And we should be using it more. So, well, on our closing question, there's no barrier to entry in social media. And if someone takes the time, reviews the data, and really digs into what works and how to build a data bank for their individual clients, I mean, would you recommend anyone and everyone getting into podcasting, getting into social media? I mean, everyone thinks they're going to do it and get rich. And I don't think that should be the motivation behind it, because it's not the case. Sorry to burst your bubble.
My 11-year-old son sure does.
You know, when someone's looking to build their group, their awareness, their footprint, what's your advice to them?
I mean, you have to do it. I mean, if you have a story to tell, or if you have a message, or you are intrigued at all. I mean, I remember I would like look, you know, I would see these conferences and I would see people post like a picture of being at a conference. And I would think, gosh, there's so much more to tell, you know?
Yeah.
But that picture is so powerful. And that right there is what captured like me to like move forward with promoting people at these events, or going to sites and promoting people, or being at an event and seeing a Schlumberger guy walk by in his overalls and me grab him and say, can I interview you? And he's like, me? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how about I take you out on our new rig? I'm like, okay, you know. So I wrapped up my team and we left our booth.
Yeah.
And we went to a drilling rig and we learned about, you know, this new dual rig that Schlumberger had in West Texas out there that no one had seen yet. And it had been moved from somewhere else and it had only been run a few times, but it was like this huge deal. And it was because I was at a corporate event and I saw someone in overalls and I wanted to talk to him, you know? Yeah. And that's kind of where I feel like it kind of really needs to come like from the bottom up versus the top down. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to go and you want to hear CEOs talk and you want to hear their projections and their insight and, you know, what their operating costs are and how they can stay within budget and still make a profit, and how their relationships with their service companies might need to be changed, but also become more loyal because they're trying to stay within, you know, a certain price. And all of those things matter, but you also have to pay attention to who's doing it. Mm-hmm. And who's on the rigs and who's out there all night long and give them a little bit of appreciation. And I feel like there's that disconnect. And I've always just wanted to kind of like bring that, you know, together and allow that to be where we we mesh as an actual industry, because there's just, and then if you want to throw in gender on there, you know, there's obviously way more men.
It's kind of exhausting, honestly.
Yeah. So, you know, but I mean, overall, it's kind of just like not being stuck up about, you know, your position and
your status.
Yeah, in your expense account. Like, like remember how to network and remember what it's really about. It's not just a luxury trip to go to a conference and, and not pay attention to the booths and the people that are there. And that was kind of one of the things I noticed was, at OTC, I walked by a booth one time and there's just this guy and he's like this the whole time and
on his cell phone.
Yeah. And, and like, he's got a nice booth. I mean, and they're not cheap, but I'm like, man, if I posted this, you'd be in so much trouble. But instead I'm like, hi, what's your name? What do you mind? And I'm going to tag you and your boss is going to think you're doing, you're cool. You're networking out there because I'm here as press. And, but then there's other people that like literally like want to just tackle you and tell you everything that they have. And then you push it on social media and you might get more views that way than you would at the actual conference. So it's kind of like, I found that there was a way to come into, this area and, make my mark, but also highlight and interview and promote the people that are doing this week to week, because they don't go to these. It's not like once a year they go to these. These marketing teams are hitting the road and going, all over the country, and they kind of all over time are the same people. So it's like, hey Bill, hey Bob, setting their tents up and they're hoping on good traffic, but if you can actually set up an interview and post it on Instagram, connect to their pages and give them a little bit of a spotlight, they really appreciate it. And it wouldn't take much for them to do that for themselves, Right. So I think that people are coming into doing that, but I do think that people are scared of it. I think the oil and gas industry was a little scared of going that way. And I don't know if it was because of, the anti-oil and gas campaigns or what, if they were worried that they were going to be trashed on social media and the trolls were going to come out and get them and all that stuff. Or if they just didn't want to have to monitor what was being put out. But they literally had stale accounts. And that's the first thing people do when they hear a company name. They Google you or they look you up on Instagram. So,
or they listen to a podcast.
They absolutely listen to a podcast.
Well, Kristen, what is next for Oil Country Media? I mean, you really have taken these platforms by storm. People can find you on Facebook, Instagram. You are on Twitter. I see you on LinkedIn. I mean, you've really left no rock unturned. So where are you headed?
It's funny because that's changed a little bit here and there. But I really enjoy covering conferences and connecting through that medium. I miss the live shows. There's really nothing like it. You can absolutely make your way to talk to whoever you want. If you, if you're like you always say, they can't ignore me if I'm in front of them.
Exactly. They try, but they don't succeed.
Yeah. They know. So, there's that. And a lot of people are shy or go to these events and don't know how to kind of like take charge of it, but you can really do that. And I feel like social media allows you to connect to the events as well and promote it. And it helps both the conference and the company to do so. But the ROI part that you have asked about, and
I am fascinated by the ROI.
Well, I think it's kind of like, it really is a funnel. But the ROI comes from all different ways. For me personally, it's come in on a lot of different ways. And I definitely have had a lot more return than I have on investment. As far as in the beginning, I did certain things that I thought were like huge things because I'm spending my own money, my own paychecks. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be, conservative on this. And immediately those were returned. So I realized that I didn't have to like focus so much on getting what I put out back, but for companies that are trying to get their product out there, be heard, have a hashtag that matters, create a podcast on their own from the inside team. All of that literally leads to sales leads, to phone calls.
Oh, absolutely. It's reputational marketing. If your name is out there, they will come, because if you're establishing yourself as a subject matter expert and you are a good neighbor, you're not leading with a hard sell, you're leading with expertise.
They're looking for you. I mean, they're searching for you. So and that's kind of where people don't understand that. I mean, I get more junk mail from my contact form on a website, from sometimes I don't even know what the message is saying. I'm like, but I get more benefit from people seeing me on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn just from posts than I do from any time I've ever paid for an ad or, paid for Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising. I've done promos on all that, but you literally do connect to people by pushing your own content out or pushing other people's content out, but it has to be from your personal page. It can't always be from a company PowerPoint presentation type format, because
it's
people get tired of it. But you also, if you have a large company, you absolutely have to have a rule that your employees share your content.
It's footprint upon footprint. Why would you not?
Well, and they don't. They post and there's like a few likes and then that's it. But you really need to have everyone kind of on the same, page. And that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, is getting everybody on the same page. So it may be that there is somebody that says, okay, this content needs to be made by a certain amount of time. And then there needs to be like a main strategist who's looking at analytics and pushing things out and playing with it, because it needs to be tweaked on its own. It's not do this, do that, and you're going to grow. You really have to like try to connect to people that are in your industry, related to your industry, used to be in your industry and still have contacts. You don't really want a foodie following, it's not going to help.
Exactly.
So, and that's why some of the like fake followers and those things, if the numbers look good, it might make someone who doesn't understand data and what's out there. It might impress someone, for a moment. Yeah. But over time, when, they make a post and there's like 30,000 followers and not one like on it, I mean, there has to be one of those 30,000 fans that likes your, post, but
exactly. Someone will pay attention.
I'll do it. But, so it's scary. And I think people get discouraged because they put themselves out there and it's like, okay, maybe like 6 or 7 people like your post, and you don't really know how to get other people to reshare your content. You don't know how to get other people to tag you. You don't know how to get people to want you to share their posts. You can run contests, you can, do giveaways, and all of those still will only get you so far, I think. Yeah. But I think it's kind of a person, like you say, it's a passion, and you have to like literally, you can't just have a marketing team that's saying, okay, I'll make your PDFs. I'll make you a flyer. Does this boat look nice here for this tournament? But you really need to have someone that's like in the industry, going to these events, knows the language, knows how to connect with the people, and cares about the event.
Yeah.
Cares about not just to make it look pretty on a PDF and it's all shiny and glossy and beautiful, but somebody who actually is saying, this is what's behind the event. This is how long the event's been around. This is how the event started back in the 80s with these oil guys. This is how long they've been donating to Shriners Hospital, and and just things like that to remind people what oil and gas.
Be proud of that.
If you can get on podcasts like yours, and you can have the owner of the company, the president of the company, the leading sales rep, if you can have them talk to an audience and explain who they are and put their name out there, and then take that content and promote it as well, because they're promoting themselves and their passion, and so that's kind of where people, they don't want to toot their own horn, and they need to.
Yeah.
They're going to be waiting for that band to show up. I love that quote.
If you're passionate and you have passion, be proud of it.
Yeah.
What is a book, podcast, or other resource that has helped you along your journey that you would recommend?
I would like to think that I've helped people as well, but I had to learn, the hard way, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. They're like, who's this girl that's constantly posting all the time, But I worked my way up to developing relationships with people that I admired through social media, through taking their picture, asking if I could post it, highlighting it. But I mean, there's so many people that definitely have inspired me. I will not say that I followed anyone's path for me or anyone's strict rules. If that is put in front of me, I have a hard time, because I know that I need to adjust as much as the privacy policies and the log.
Those are just guides.
Exactly. But I mean, Pink Petro, Katie Maynard was very influential as far as letting women know that they can be proud of it. I've been mentioned in Katie Maynard's book, Grow with the Flow.
Which is so cool.
It is really cool. And it was a complete surprise. So thank you. And then Ryan Ray also mentioned me in the acknowledgments of
what's his podcast?
His is Texas. Well, he's got a few, but it's Global Energy Media, and it's Texas Oil and Gas Podcast.
I'll be sure to link them as shout outs.
He's a great human being, but he has a book out there too about careers in oil and gas. And I mean, it is like from the, every sector from the beginning to the end, everything you could do as a career in oil and gas. And it's literally a guide for someone who's looking to get into it or is in it and looking to move up, excel. And, he's in the pipeline industry as well.
What's that book called?
It's literally called Careers in the Oil and Gas Industry.
Okay.
Mostly Jackie Daly being on her podcast. That was probably the podcast that I was on that had views that it was the highest listened to podcast that she had.
That's awesome.
That meant a lot to me, because that was about Texas Energy Day and what my purpose was and why I was going to that event and going live, just picking up my cell phone and not having like all this professional gear. I mean, it's funny when I'm at a Heart Energy conference and I'm standing next to like the professional photographer who's amazing. Thank God he's like so nice to me, because I'm standing there with my iPhone,
Well, Kristen, Thank you so much for all that you have done for oil and gas. Thank you for all you're doing. I am so thrilled to see where Oil Country Media is going because I know you have some really cool things in the works. And really, thank you from a digital perspective because the pioneer efforts that you made to really bring this to industry, I mean, you were one of the first, and you were most definitely the first female to do so. And I don't think that we would be accepting digital and the way we're seeing now without your efforts. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I love picking your brain, and I can't wait to get you back to talk about like back end stats.
Well, you're really kind, and I'm very proud of what you're putting out there too, because you're definitely deserving of what you're doing. I mean, you're pulling things from all over, and I can't even imagine where you're going to go. But that being said, I do want you to come live on my Instagram page.
Oh, fun.
Today. So I know you've got like 85 interviews lined up. I think you interview more people than I've ever known anyone to do. It's obvious that you love it so much and you're very good at it. I definitely want you on there and just kind of, back and forth and, and talking to everyone. I mean, there's a lot that you have to offer. You don't really talk about, I mean, you do, but you could highlight who you are as far as an engineer on your Instagram page a lot more, I think.
Oh, well, thank you. I will definitely take that advice because you are the Instagram guru. So, all right. Well, fabulous. I cannot wait for a live session. And just thank you again for being you. You are a rock star.
You too, Catherine.